because he lives.
The dateline was far back in 1927 and precisely on April 5th. Where the cry of a newborn baby pierced the chilling atmosphere, heralding joy in the home of a certain Mr. James Okoh and his wife Agnes, who was a devout Christian mother in the Roman Catholic faith. It was a baby boy. Of a certainty, even the heavens must have rejoiced at the birth of this handsome and adorable child entrusted into the care of James and Agnes Okoh. As this was simply a divinely ordained arrangement to wipe the tears and bring succor not only to the family but even to generations unborn. The young boy not only became the only surviving child of James and Agnes Okoh, who incidentally became Mama Odozi Obodo of the Christ Holy Church International, he was also to become the patriarch of the ministry which he labored to international acclaim. Marius Okoh, as the boy was christened when he was baptized into the Catholic faith, from where he grew to become a mass server. Perhaps never realized what destiny had in stock for him, but one thing stood for sure: he was to become the progenitor and father of the present General Superintendent and the sistine line of Christ Holy Church International, the Most Reverend Dr. Daniel Okoh, who was to grow up and mentored under his tutelage, sharing together the bad, the good, and most memorable times. There is therefore no better authority to share the life and times of our late father in the Lord, late Marius Okoh, who toiled tirelessly to lay the foundation of a profoundly renowned ministry, the Christ Holy Church International. And so, how did it all begin? How was a young Marius born? What were the circumstances surrounding his birth? And how was his growing up years like?
He is first and foremost my father. I grew up under his care and nurture for 16 years, close to 16 years. My relationship with him was more like a father and son relationship. He was my friend, actually. And what I knew about him was that, because he told me quite a lot about his growing up years, he was raised by a poor widow. The father died when he was still a little boy, still in primary school.
Even though his Christian background could have been pivotal to what he was destined to become, Marius Okoh was among the privileged few to have access to Western education.
And he did very well in his education. He was, throughout his primary school, he took first position in all the classes. And he told me he was the school prefect at the time. And what it meant was that he would do all the house chores and would try to get to school on time, and did his job as a school prefect, and still did excellently well in his academics.
This prepared him for his employment with the Colonial Public Works Department in 1946, precisely September 26th in Enugu State. Almost at the same time, his mother, Agnes Okoh, started the prayer ministry.
Who, of course, is the founder of Christ Holy Church International. And the mother was running that ministry. He was not fully involved in the ministry, but he gave the mother all the encouragement. He was a civil servant working very far away from. The mother was at Onitsha and he was at Okoh.
At entering point, he served as a storekeeper. Later on, he was moved to other departments, including civil works, from where he was sponsored to Yabatech for in-service training to do some certificate courses in engineering-related field. Little wonder why he was popularly referred to as an engineer by close acquaintances.
My father was a civil engineer. He would take me to site. I started going to site, building site with him at the age of 7.
But then, destiny has something else in stock for young Marius. Situations and circumstances of life dealt him heavy blows. His beautiful wife, Pauline Okoh, though, gave birth to 7 boys, but only one survived. He was also to witness the sickness but consequent healing of his mother.
The mother became very ill to the point that she couldn't go to market anymore because she was a textile seller in the market. And so she had to stay at home, and the young Marius was taking care of her. So that was what actually brought both of them very close. They were very close as mother and son.
And who foretold him of the prophecy that he would someday be ordained as God's servant in the ministry?
He was actually called. He was called.
Even though Marius was skeptical of that prophecy then, as he had other plans of furthering his education. But then, man proposes, and it's only God that disposes. An interesting scenario played out.
In the morning, he was still preparing for work. And then a big lorry came into the compound, the quarters where they were living. And people came from the church, people who he knew, some elders from the church came down from the vehicle. And the truck was an empty truck. So they came into the house. They sat him down. They said, "We are here because the Lord directed us this morning in a morning prayer meeting that it is time for you to come and join the ministry." And so my father said, even though he received it with shock, he had to consult with my mother. So they went into the bedroom, and then they held a meeting for a few minutes. And they decided that, well, this is it. He went to the office, resigned that morning, and then put his things in the vehicle and joined them to come back to Onitsha to start the ministry. That by the time he left, the white people that worked with him, his boss and some others, they didn't believe that he would leave unceremoniously like that as a young man, very promising, working very closely with the senior officers, and they were mentoring him to take a higher position. So what my father what they did was to continue paying his monthly salary. And they said that he was mad, that by the time he would come back to his senses, he would come back for the job. So they kept the job for him for some months until they were very sure that he wasn't coming back.
Quite interestingly, young Marius became a minister of the gospel and worked tirelessly to update and equip himself with the task ahead.
My father always worked like a visionary. All his life, he worked like somebody who saw clearly his tomorrow, and who also saw the way he would end his life on this earth. His life was prophetic. His attitude was prophetic. Whatever he said was prophetic.
His many ecumenical duties and assignments was to chart a new course and direction of his calling as he met and became a friend of Reverend Collins and Cook, 2 American missionaries working in Igbo land who had heard of the fame and exploits of Prophetess Agnes at that time.
Those American missionaries that came, no one invited them. They heard about the ministry, and they were in Nigeria moving about helping prayer ministries and churches to grow. And those 2 Americans came to look for my grandmother, who was the founder. And they said they've heard about her ministry and they would want to be part of the growth of the ministry.
Marius Okoh was better groomed and later ordained by these Americans in 1958 as the general superintendent of the church.
They were actually the ones that ordained him a priest,
marking the beginning of the 3 cardinal principles of the Christ Holy Church International.
Christ Holy Church is unique because it is really an expression of African Christianity. You know, the way the African has received the gospel and taking the advantage of the positives in the tradition to bring the gospel to the people, make the people own the gospel.
Marius Okoh's love for evangelism and general work of God was infectious. He was fervent, diligent, and hardworking as his team of ministers and American missionary friends took and propagated the gospel to all the nooks and crannies of east of the Niger.
They said they would like to organize a crusade for the ministry, and then they will bring their money just for, and when they get the new converts, they'll hand over to my grandmother's prayer ministry. And I remember that it's still found in the minutes of the elders meeting. My father was the secretary of the elders meeting then. I have that minutes. And the elders deliberated on that and said they were going to tell the founder. They went to the founder to tell the founder. The founder said, okay, I'll put in prayers to ask God if this is a partnership that should, that will work. So she put in prayer and she said the Lord revealed to her that yes, they will partner with the Americans, but the Americans should keep their money. That the money must be generated locally within the congregation. How many were they then? They were not up to 40 members. And they were not rich members. More than 99%, well, just say 99% of them were very poor. And so what they did was, they called the Americans and said, no, you keep your money. We can provide. And so that was how the church held their first crusade.
Recording impressive turnouts with diverse miracles.
A crusade at Bethel field at Onitsha. There was heavy rain. And he told people not to avoid the rain. Everybody was there. And somebody had a big sore on the leg. And that was a bit cancerous. And they said, frog, live frog, jumped out from that place. And the person, in a few days, was healed.
7 also as translated to the American missionaries.
My father became their translator on the platform. The first crusade was held at Onitsha.
Many souls, irrespective of creed, tribal, or age leanings, were won over to the kingdom.
If we want to be where the heart of Christ is, we need to make the gospel of Christ bring out the simplicity that is there.
Such was the zeal and love for the kingdom business that Marius undertook many selfless ventures for the church, such as buying of the first gospel van of the ministry, a Volkswagen bus.
They came with their wives and children. So they had a combi bus they were using. So they wanted to sell the combi bus. So my father talked very quickly with my mother, said, this is it. This is an opportunity to invest in order to raise funds for the ministry. So my father paid for that vehicle. I think it was for less than 100 pounds then, Nigerian pounds. And they bought the bus. A few days later, my grandmother called my father and said, I received a message. The Lord said that this vehicle is for missionary activities,
as well as the establishment and planting of many branches of the church in several communities and cities across the country.
By that time, the founder at a point had a piece of land that she bought. Then things were very easy when government was doing allocation, so she got a piece of land at Onitsha. My father too was able to buy something that was not up to one plot of land when he was in civil service at Okoh. So my grandmother figured out that my father would want to one day, get fed up with the whole thing and get back to civil service. So she told him, would you want to, I can offer you actually this my plot at Onitsha. Build whatever you want to build there. It's your own from now. And my father accepted. The moment he started developing that one, he now donated that one at Okoh to the church.
And perhaps his early trainings and adventures as a brave, bold, and fearless disposition must have prepared him for the evangelistic task as Marius ultimately laid the foundation for a glorious reign that the church enjoyed today.
That on the day he brought some young men from the church to clear the site to start building, a certain man came with his gun, claiming that the land belonged to him. That anybody who would try to clear one single grass from the piece of land would be a dead man. He did his last prayer and came back, took the machete from the boys and said he was going to clear this bush. He said he cleared the first one, waited to hear the sound of the gun. He didn't hear anything. Cleared the second one, he didn't hear anything. He started clearing. By the time he turned back, the man ran away.
Outside from his evangelistic fervor, many did not know that Marius was also divinely gifted as a healer.
Somewhere in the 70s, in the mid-70s, my father was somewhere else and he heard that this man was sick. And at a point they told him that he died. So they called my father, waiting for him to at least take a family decision, not just as a minister. So my father said, no, this man can't die now. So he went to him, remembered what the prophet did in the Old Testament. He laid himself on top of the man, a dead man. And then he was praying on top of a dead body. And he was praying and praying. And he said at a time, the man sneezed and sneezed out some white particles from his nose. Opened his eyes and was asking them what happened. That man lived for another 5 years before he now passed on as an old man.
Apart from his religious disposition, Marius had a good mix with the secular world.
6 feet, huge like that, at his age. So when he would sneeze, those people, when they sneeze, it makes a lot of terrifying noise. So he will sneeze, maybe when they're in a choir practice or in a youth meeting, because they are youth, he will just sneeze. They will say, sorry. So I say, no, call me Igwe. Call me Igwe. So when he will sneeze, he will say, Igwe.
It is often been said that most great men live and perhaps die before the time.
He was doing things like somebody who was in a hurry, somebody that was running against time. He was doing like somebody who wouldn't want to be caught up by time. He was so much in a hurry. What he did in the last 5 years of his existence was huge. He was working like that. Any project he engaged himself in, he tried to finish on time.
It could even be assumed that he had a premonition of his passing into glory.
That's why I say the man had premonition about his death. On the day he died, he doesn't used to keep cash. I came to his cupboard. He left it open and left some money, cash there. And that was what enabled me to run around. He prepared for everything. That man, The training manual we use for our ministers, which he prepared more than 50 years ago, we have not found any single reason to change it.
Sometime around August 1979 was to mark the beginning of his journey into glory.
We were at home. And then there was no mobile phone. And somebody came to the house to tell us that he was looking for one Marius. I said, what are you looking for? He said, he had an accident at the bridge. We got there. We discovered that he couldn't move one of his legs very well. But no bone was broken. The next day we went for x-ray, nothing. And we discovered that the accident had affected his spinal cord somehow.
Even though Marius Okoh seemed to be recovering well from the accident, few months after, the unexpected happened.
And he was already doing well, after he was recovering very well. He was eating very well. He was still moving around. He stopped moving around with walking stick. As you could see, he wasn't with a walking stick. And suddenly, on March 1, 1980, I was still in secondary school in Dennis Memorial Grammar School, Onitsha. We had inter-house sports. And I went for the inter-house sports. When I came back, I was told that my father was having a hiccup. But before the hiccup, he had tonsillitis. So they tried to remove it with fingers, and they were able to remove. But they said, I don't know what happened, but because I'm not a medical personnel, but that was what I knew as a little boy. And then later on, I heard that he had hiccup. So I came back home and took him to the hospital. I left him there with my mother. I came back to the house, and we were told what we'll bring the next morning. By the time we got there by 5:30 in the morning, we heard people wailing at the veranda of the hospital. We got there, they said they passed on just a few minutes.
And many more formed and represented the virtues of the man in whom is still surely missed today.
The founding vision was not just to be a ministry, a prayer ministry, but a ministry that will impact positively in the lives of the community. And for you to do that, you must participate and make yourself available. He was available. And so my response to those people who will say, you're not like your father, I said, look, you are not being fair to me if you compare me to my father. My father left a very big shoe, and I'm just managing to drag my feet in those big shoes, because he had time to do those things. I didn't know how he had time to do all those things that he did.
Marius Okoh built, nurtured, and left legacies.
In his twilight days, he said to me, you see, wherever you go to and mention my name, doors will open for you. I don't have money, but I have need.
Marius Okoh was a man who saw no barriers to any of life's challenges.
Even though he was a minister in the church, a minister of the gospel, he believed that you must also be a social person. He believed that you must also be a sports person. You must get involved in community activity. You must get involved in politics. You must get involved in anything that concerns your well-being. That is one area that he believed. And he participated very well, to a point that when he passed on, I would do things and people will say, you don't do like your father. Your father will have time to come and see us. Your father will do this one. I say, but you know that what I'm doing is big. He said, your father used to do all those things, yet he'll come and see us. Because my father would close at work. He will have time for social evening. When he will come and park his vehicle by 9 p.m., he will go down the street, going to every house, not knowing anybody. He will come and he will enter into a house, knock at your door. because they knew him. Igwe.
However, it has helped in no small measure to affect and fulfill some of the aspirations of his father.
I think that my father will be happy today, wherever he would be, that at least I was able to get to that level where he will say that his son is educated. Because he believes in exposure, and he believes that education will give you that exposure. He knew where we were going to. Number two was that he wanted me to be his second in command at home in the family. That whenever he was not there, I should be able to deputize well.
It's 40 years now since his passing. To many who knew him, and particularly his son, Reverend Dr. Daniel Okoh, who shared so many affections of him, can only but be proud and thankful for the many achievements and testaments of his life.
I will thank him for giving me all the encouragement and support that I needed when he was around. Because I will always remember him for saying, this person is not too young to do this.
For Marius Okoh, to live in the hearts of those who love you is never to die.
Laying an administrative structure that has stood the test of time is to me the greatest legacy of the late Right Reverend Marius Okoh. We praise God who gave the late Right Reverend Marius Okoh to Christ's Holy Church, a man who was intelligent, assiduous, and an esteemed church administrator, as well as a church leader.
The photograph there, that you will see a man in cassock, big one there, and then myself. The young man there was me. That was the photograph, the last photograph we took together before he passed on.
Rest on, Papa, until we meet at Jesus' feet on the resurrection morning, to part no more.